Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Jason back at you with more nerd news. So today I'm actually here sitting down with my pops, Patrick O'Toole.
What's going on, man?
I've been kind of trying to do different things with the second episodes of the week, and we've had some interesting ones with Scott Sampson and with Joe coming on and doing some movie reviews with us. Today we're going to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I invited my dad on the show here because I've always been curious to try to get a non-comic perspective, a non-comic reader's perspective on the MCU and what it means for cinema and what it means going forward after, the kind of conclusion of these movies that's coming out later this year. So I don't think you've ever read a comic in your life, huh?
Yeah, I'm your right guy for the job. I have read one book, Green Lantern series you had me read, and it was good.
Oh, Blackest Night. Yeah.
But didn't draw me in.
Right, yeah. Well, it's all about history and understanding who these people are and having the impacts of their decisions make, you feel for them.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that when you asked me to do this. It's kind of like the people who read the Harry Potter books, and then you have an expectation of the movies based on that. That wasn't me. I didn't read the books. I just went to the movies and enjoyed the movies. So I think it's kind of the same thing here.
Yeah.
You comic geeks, you have an expectation of what these movies maybe should be like.
Right.
And you're either disappointed or excited because of it. I just go to enjoy the movie.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And honestly, I think one of my problems I've had of late is, fans have too much expectation. And I try to, yes, do I have expectations? Do I think I get what the movie will be before the movie comes out? Sure. But I don't want to put myself in that mindset, because I think a lot of the things I see on the internet about people talking about these things, they get very angry when things don't meet their expectations. And is that really, I guess my point is, when you read that next comic that's written by a totally different author and drawn by a totally different artist, are you mad because they changed things?
Right.
No.
But, I know we went to see the latest Star Wars movie together, and I knew that was your thing where it just blew all your expectations out of the water, and you were kind of geeked up about that. It was like, that was great.
Yeah, I pretty much was sure I knew what that movie's plot was going to be before sitting down. And I was wrong. Everybody was wrong. All the theories I read, all the videos I saw, everyone was wrong.
Right.
And I think that's great. When a movie can defy my expectations as someone who's, a quote-unquote expert who has followed everything and read everything and knows everything, when you can shatter what I think the movie's going to be, you did a good job.
Right, but I think some people get upset about that because they want it to meet their expectations, and they aren't even open to whether it was a good movie or not.
Well, and Ryan Johnson said in an interview, he said, if I would have made the Star Wars movie that I wanted to make, that I think all you wanted to see, it would have been a bad movie. It wouldn't have been a good movie. And it wouldn't have been a good continuation for these characters' stories. I love Han and Leia and Chewie and Luke. I love all these characters. But it's time to let go. Yeah. It's time to move on. We're going to introduce some new characters.
Exactly.
But the MCU is, obviously been going on since 2008. And, we're going to talk about some specifics about some of the movies. So I don't know what you're doing with your life. If you haven't watched the movies, go out and watch the movies, then come back and listen to us chit-chat about it. But it started all the way back in 2008 with Iron Man.
Yeah, and I love that movie. It's what drew me into the whole thing. I got to say, I'm not a comic book guy, and I'm not sure I'm a superhero guy even. I love Batman, but other than that...
Everybody loves Batman.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
And not much else, and didn't like Superman, didn't like anything else. And so I went to it, because it sounded like it was good, and you were hyping it up.
Oh, yeah.
And it was great. And to this day, they've made a lot of good movies, there's no question, but it's still the one that I draw back to and say, without that movie, I wouldn't be here today having watched all these movies.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and, we were talking about it a little bit ago. Jon Favreau, the guy who directed the movie, really was adamant to have Robert Downey Jr. come in and play the character. And Kevin Feige was on board with that idea, but the committee that also was in charge of kind of how the films were going to be shaped and what their stories were going to be was not okay with that, because at the time Robert Downey Jr. just wasn't really the guy you were looking for to lead your film.
Yeah, and so that, and that's a huge decision, because this is their first foray. If it doesn't go well,
oh yeah,
there might not be 12 movies, 15 movies.
Well, it was also really dependent on the success of it. Was also really dependent on what their comic world was going to be, because Marvel, the reason they had sold a bunch of their properties prior to that was because they almost went bankrupt,
Right.
and comic sales had dipped quite a bit, and people just weren't happy with what was going on, and maybe people had lost interest for a little while. I mean, it's come back around lately, and I kind of credit the movies with that. Is more people are now going out and thinking, you know what, I kind of want to read about Iron Man now.
Right.
I want to see what other people have done with this character, not just Jon Favreau. So yeah, I really do think it's an interesting, it's been an interesting journey coming all the way from 2008. Here we are, 2018, and we're about to see it all come together in one final film. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it wouldn't have been possible without that success.
Well, and the thing for me as well is throughout all of these superhero movies, I know the things that resonate with me is I like the fact that his superhero power is something he created. It wasn't like some mutant or some alien.
Right.
It's just
it
something
hit by
he
gamma
made.
rays
Right,
or anything
right.
like that. Yeah.
So I like that, number one. But then, the other thing is, as I go through all these movies, not only am I looking for something more natural, I like the villain to be human as well.
Sure.
I don't like aliens as the villain to destroy the world.
Sure.
I like another human antagonist, if you will.
Right.
And so when the movie is like Iron Man, where that's exactly what you have,
Yeah.
then that's going to be the kind I'm going to be drawn to.
Yeah, and some of the biggest stories have had actually some of the most human villains. I mean, Captain America: Civil War, Baron Zemo is, obviously he's not Baron Zemo in the movie story. He's just Zemo, but his whole point was to pit them against one another and destroy them from the inside out, and he did it through tactical, thinking and sabotage, and
Yeah, and that's why
it's great.
It stands out as the best of the Captain America movies, I think. I loved that idea of where they drew him there to the end. They're fighting with each other, and that's all he wanted.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking to create a monster that could destroy the world or rule the world. He just wanted them to suffer because he had suffered.
Yeah, Zemo actually, I think, gets a couple of the best lines in the movie right there at the end. And the one, just based on what we're just covering, he says, an empire toppled by its enemies can be rebuilt, but one that crumbles from within, that's dead.
It's perfect.
Yeah, and he gets some of the greatest moments. He had the great moment there where he was about to kill himself at the end with Panther,
Right.
who stops him and just says, "The living are not done with you yet." You don't get to get off that easy.
You're right, exactly.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I definitely think that, I'm not in agreement with you that Captain America Civil War is the best Captain America movie, because I think Winter Soldier is clearly the best Captain America movie.
I got you.
Civil War was just, a Avengers movie with a Captain America.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
Now, truth be told, the Russo brothers, I think, did a good job of still keeping the narrative focused around Captain America. But if you go back and you watch the Avengers films, the narrative's kind of always focused around Captain America. He's the leader. Right? So, yes, you have all this other stuff going on with the characters in their own kind of arcs, but Captain America is the driving force behind the story. He is the main character, if you will.
No question.
So, yeah, it was just another Avengers movie. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That was a great thing. Civil War was absolutely the way to start Phase 3. Kevin Feige said in an interview, if you're gonna take away their preparedness for Thanos, you have to tear them apart first. You're going to challenge them with an enemy that's beyond anything they've ever faced and make them completely unprepared for that.
Gotcha.
Right? So that there is that devastation that brings them back together as a team, right? And I think it's going to be great. I honestly can't wait. Did you hear that the date got moved up, so it's not May 4th anymore? It's actually going to be April 27th.
Yeah.
So it was probably a calculated move by Disney to, not compete with Solo, which comes out that month also.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they did it in kind of a funny way. They tweeted, and Robert Downey Jr. responded with, "I want to see the movie earlier." And they were like, "That's a great idea, Mr. Stark. How about this date?" And he was like, "Can the whole world see it with me?" And they were like, "Sure, why not? April 27th. And so it was a funny little kind of exchange.
I'm sure it was calculated based on whatever else is going on in the movie world, because you want to have the headlines for as long as you can have them.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, they just announced a whole bunch of dates going through the year 2022 that have no movies attached to them.
Right.
I mean, we've got 3 movies coming out a year, and beyond the beginning of 2019, we have no idea what those movies are going to be.
But you get your dates out there because your competition needs to know what dates to stay away from as well.
Sure. And especially with the success they've been having. Speaking of success they've been having, honestly, I know we went to go see the third Thor film together. I know you said that you weren't as big a fan of the Thor films as kind of a whole thing, but I think the third one really redeemed everything about the character.
Well, the third one definitely has some good humor in it.
Thor's goofy character in the comics too.
But even when you put Jeff Goldblum in something, you know you're going to get good lines out of him.
Yep, just Goldblum it up there.
No, there's no question. The Thor movies were good, and to a degree, the reason I liked them is even though we're outside of our universe or outside of our world for this action, we're still dealing with humanoids, more gods than aliens, if you will.
Sure.
When you're talking about Loki and Thor and
I mean the humans thought of them as gods.
right.
Loki says it in one of the movies, though. He says, or Odin, I think, says it in one of the movies. We're not gods. We live, we bleed, we die.
Right.
But they, plus or minus, 10,000 years or so.
But because they're kind of humanoids, then I can get my head around them and root for. And I thought Loki has been a good villain throughout.
/ companion.
Right.
/ brother.
Gonna stab you in the back while I give you a big hug.
Well, I think that comes full circle in Thor Ragnarok too, where yes, we have seen Loki just screw with Thor throughout the movies that they've been a part of, and finally Thor's to a place where it doesn't faze him anymore. He sees it coming every time,
right.
Because there's the moment between them in the hangar where Loki kind of slips off and lets the hologram Loki keep walking with Thor, but he's already got the little shock button on him that paralyzes him and stuff. So it's one of those things. They had a similar joke in Thor: The Dark World where Loki was kind of Thor came down to visit Loki after their mother had died, after Frigga had died, and what he sees is the nice clean room and Loki kind of standing there, and he says, enough, take this down. And it's an illusion that Loki was presenting because he's actually very sad and devastated that this mother figure, even though she's not biologically his mother, is still the woman who cared for him and took care of him like her own son. So they've kind of, I think, built that. But it was great to see it finally just shattered in Thor Ragnarok. And Loki still thinks he has the upper hand because he just assumes Thor's dumb and never going to catch on,
Yeah, no, there's no question. It was a nice partnership of the Hulk with Thor. I was wondering about it, whether that was really going to be work, but
their little buddy cop movie,
yeah,
it did. It really worked well. But Thor and Thor: The Dark World, I mean, they were really more trying to adapt Thor comics, and I think once Guardians of the Galaxy came out, they realized that when you set things off of Earth, that's kind of the best way to tell the story, right? It's just the crazy aliens and comedy and huge action with spaceships and things like that. And so Thor has always fit into the sci-fi part of the Marvel Universe, but they hadn't really embraced it, I think, until they got to the third film.
Right.
Because, again, the success of the two Guardians of the Galaxy movies cannot be denied. People loved that.
Right, but not me, and you know that.
I
know I'm not in the majority, but to me, again, we're getting into the sci-fi part of the world, and when I start thinking sci-fi, I'm into Star Trek and Star Wars, and...
First of all, Guardians of the Galaxy is a great Star Wars movie.
Well, that's all it is. I mean, that's all it is. It's Star Wars.
How can you not like
Because it's not Star Wars. It's pretending to be Star Wars. That's my thing. That's my bias, I guess, if you will, against Guardians. So there's no question I went into Guardians with pretty low expectations, and it met them.
Sure.
That's my bias, but that's just because I'm a big Star Wars guy, and I'm like, okay, don't even try to go there because you're not gonna make it.
Well, that was honestly because the original Star Wars movies, obviously, from the 70s and 80s, right. They're great movies. They're classic movies. The prequel Star Wars movies are not that good.
Right.
They're okay. They tell a story. They don't tell it as good as the old Star Wars movies did, but they get their story across. But I think that's why Guardians of the Galaxy resonated so well with fans at the time, because we are Star Wars fans. And the reason I like Guardians of the Galaxy is the same reason I like Star Wars. Because it's fun, it's space, there's aliens, it's crazy. I love that. And I think at the time for Star Wars fans, we needed something that represented that was good. And so that's why everyone lost their minds, right? I was ready. When we walked out of the theater, one of my friends turned to me and said, that was the best Star Wars movie I've ever seen. Because that's the joke.
Well,
we have watched crappy Star Wars movies.
Star Wars, the people that were producing it weren't doing a great job. But I'm going back to when I was young.
Sure.
And Star Wars came out, and it was the thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt you're
So
an
you're
old
just
man.
never gonna get me off of that.
I know, I get it. But so, obviously, I think I remember talking to you, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was a little more your speed.
Yeah, I really didn't like, I don't know, the whole what I liked was the redemption at the end.
Sure.
That's what made me say I liked that movie.
So, like, the moment where Yondu sacrifices
Right.
himself to save
Right.
Star-Lord, sure.
That was the whole... If that was going to be... To me, that was the climax of the movie.
It absolutely was the climax of the movie.
So,
Yeah.
that made whatever happened before that okay.
I seem to remember, though, hearing, I think from Danielle, my father's wife, that Drax particularly surprised you in the second movie.
Yes,
as
no
a comic
question.
relief
Yeah, with no
character.
question, that was great. And there's no question, Baby Groot was better than Big Groot.
I love Baby Groot. Most people don't like Baby Groot, though. Most people thought it was
Yeah.
just a gimmick to sell toys, which it was.
Well, it was, but it was good.
But it was funny. I
Yeah.
liked it. Yeah, I had fun with it.
Because the character in the first movie just was kind of non-essential.
He's the muscle.
Right, but taking him out of the movie didn't change the dynamic, and putting in the little guy, I think just added a little fun
Sure.
to the movie.
But I do think that, the climax of you're right. I mean, the climax of the film is definitely the scene between Quill and Yondu. And there, not only is it an emotional scene to see anyway, but then when he sits down and he puts on Father and Son, this was just the perfect song choice for that moment. And I know it sounds cliche, right? Because of course Father and Son is the perfect, song choice.
Right.
But it adds so much weight to the scene. And then you get the Ravagers come in and they have their celebration of Yondu, who wasn't the bad guy that they thought he was. I cried like a little girl.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it was great.
It tore me up. It really did.
And I think, again, that's kind of what gets to the point of what makes, as a moviegoer, not as a comic reader, what makes these movies a hit or not in my heart is just that. Does it make some point? Is there some pivot point in the movie where somebody's heart changes? That always is what affects me. So that's why the first Iron Man, I don't know if it'll ever not be my favorite one, no matter how good. Black Panther was outstanding, and no matter how good the future is, I don't know that I'll ever get off of Iron Man, because I remember at the very beginning of the movie, he's there, he's there working on the Iron Man suit so he can get out, and the guy that's with him there, I don't remember the characters,
Yinsen.
is talking to him about, kids and everything, and realizes who Tony is and what he's about, and he says to him, "You're a man who has everything and nothing."
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's the moment Tony snaps out of it, but that's the journey Tony's going on.
Right. He's good. Yeah, I mean, in all reality, Yinsen, what made Iron Man such a thing in the comic world, because in the comic world they set it in Vietnam, but otherwise the story was still the same. Yinsen was even the guy who helped him. It just wasn't his first name. I think it was his last name or something like that. They've switched it around a little bit, but that, it's like Peter Parker watching Uncle Ben die.
Right.
This is the moment when I realize I'm wrong. Everything I've done up to this point is wrong, and I'm being selfish, and I need to change. So then you have Tony realizing that he cares very deeply about Pepper, and realizing that his company is wrong in the things that they've done, and his parents were wrong in the things that they set up, right?
Right, but what's great about his character is just because you've converted, your past keeps coming back to haunt you.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes each of the ensuing movies significant, because it's Tony's past coming back. He's having to fight this fight over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because you can't just erase your past and walk away. It finds you.
Absolutely. And I think Mickey Rourke, that was at a time when he was really, Iron Man 2, when he was really kind of, I don't know what he was doing. He's kind of losing his mind a little bit. He changed his look completely, shaved his head, and started wearing dreadlocks on the, I don't know what he had going on. But it worked really well for the villain.
Right, absolutely. It was a good
villain.
villain.
Movie. He was creepy, and you kind of felt for him, too, because his father kind of got screwed out of the deal.
Absolutely.
So it works. And then I think in the third film, we go back and we get to see Tony make a mistake when he was still just the drunk playboy selling
He's
weapons.
sleeping with somebody that's trying to do something fantastic, and he blows off the geek who has a plan, and that comes back to haunt him.
Of course. So yes, his arc is definitely, I think, and even at that point within his arc, when we got the post-traumatic stress causing him to just go crazy with building Iron Man suits and trying to find a suit to protect every state on the planet, and it's crazy. But I think arc-wise, from the first film to the third film, we really kind of could have stopped right there, and Tony Stark could have not been a part of anything after that, because that brings his arc to such a satisfying conclusion.
Right.
And
where he blows up the suits and he removes the arc so that he's no longer beholden to any of this.
Right. He's gonna make a go with Pepper as a legitimate relationship and just be Tony Stark.
Yeah, that's where it should have ended.
Right. Obviously. Right. And that
but he's a moneymaker.
And that was the end of Robert Downey Jr.'s contract.
Right.
He was not actually contractually obligated to do any more films. And when they were going to do Civil War, they wanted him to come back. Or no, he had Avengers: Age of Ultron. That was his last one, right? So then we had Civil War, and we wanted him to come back. And so his agent basically negotiated the sweetest deal of all time. Robert Downey Jr. now gets half of all the casting budget for a film. He just gets half. That's
a pretty sweet deal for a guy that was pretty down on his luck when this all began.
It's true. I mean, I think Iron Man saved his career.
Yeah, maybe his life.
Because then he went on to do things like Sherlock Holmes, which spawned spawned one sequel, and they were both pretty good.
Absolutely, I loved them both.
Yeah, and I mean, just a lot of stuff has been going on for him since that moment. That really, up to that moment, there wasn't a lot of stuff because he got real bad with cocaine and been in and out of jail, and he just was not a moneymaker at the time.
No.
Now, truth be told, there were some great films that came out during his bad times. I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is one of the greatest Robert Downey Jr. movies I've ever seen. He's great at it. He's fantastic. And he was probably pretty drugged out of his mind the whole time.
No doubt. We've got some athletes that have lived that life too.
Right. But so I guess one of the things I wanna bring this all to a close with is, how do you look at this as an interconnected universe, right? Do you feel that it has accurately set you up for the understanding of what's going to be happening in this final act?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've done a great job of connecting things to a degree that had been a little frustrating to me, because it's like, well, we're just connecting this so we can make this movie and connecting this. I always just thought it was like a money grab,
right? Which
maybe it is, but in the comic world, I think this is all connected.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
And so
that's why I asked the question.
I don't know that.
Right.
And I just felt like it was a money grab. But because I know you, I know it's a little bigger than that this is more where it's supposed to be headed.
Yeah.
They just had to kind of draw us in. And as we've talked, I think my concern, I don't know that they make a good movie, they're going to get my money. There's no question.
Sure, yeah.
I just wonder, as Captain America walks off the scene and Iron Man walks off the scene and Thor walks off the scene, do we have the characters to continue this success? Because if the success doesn't continue, the movies will stop.
I think we do, and honestly, I might not have thought we did if not for the fact that by 2019, Disney will now own all of the characters again. Right. So, yes, is there a lot of things happening that are going to be detrimental to people's enjoyment of this? Sure. But I think that's why they were pursuing this. And that's not the only reason. Obviously, getting their hands on 20th Century Fox was a huge competition eliminator. Right. And they've now acquired a whole bunch of properties outside of Marvel that they can make movies with. But I think getting that is essential for Kevin Feige's next phase, right? Because, yes, you're right. We're not going to have Chris Evans. We're not going to have Downey Jr. We're not going to have Hemsworth. We may not even have like Ruffalo or Scarlett Johansson or any of these people anymore. I'm not really sure if they're just kind of contract film to film or if they've got a more long-term thing. But the X-Men and the Fantastic Four integrated within that narrative to move forward can be huge for them. Yes, you're losing Chris Evans, but you could gain a new guy playing Wolverine. Well,
there's no question. It's going to be about who do you choose for those leads. Yes. That always determines the success.
Yeah.
And they've got to be the right fit. Yeah, I'm a little excited, I guess, about the new Avengers movie, Infinity War.
Infinity War, yeah.
Because I think it is going to show the picture a little bit bigger as Thanos himself shows up to be a villain instead of sending his lackeys out.
Well, they're still going to be lackeys. They're just going to be really strong alien lackeys. The generals in Thanos' army are going to make an appearance. They're called the Black Order in the comics. So you have Corvus Glaive, who's their leader. Proxima Midnight, who is his number 2, Black Dwarf, who is basically a big Hulk monster type alien guy, and the Cull Obsidian, which is basically, he can basically control people's minds in the comics. I don't know what they're going to do with his power in this story, but that's definitely something he can do. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I agree with you. When we finally get the villains that have been in the background for so long on the grand stage. And I think the reason it's going to work is because what Marvel has done that I think works really well is all of these characters are so well established. We don't have to spend any time within the narrative of Infinity War introducing you to who these people are. In fact, we have to introduce you to the villains, more importantly.
Right.
So I think that's going to let Thanos and his generals take center stage in this film. We're now, for the first time, going to understand the full scope of his plan and what he's trying to accomplish.
But I am looking forward. I mean, I think it's significant in my mind how Captain America walks off the scene and how Iron Man walks off the scene. I'm anxious to see how they walk off the scene.
Sure.
It's easy to think, well, they're going to make the heroic play and give their lives because that's what superheroes do. But how that's going to happen, what that's going to look like, I'm anxious to see that more than I think anything.
I think if anybody gets that big sacrifice that saves the day, it'll be Captain America.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
And then again, we'll have Bucky there to pick up the shield and vow to carry on Steve's legacy and protect the world in his name. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all comes together. I mean, just chills every time I talk about it. I'm very excited to finally see it all come together because, yes, you've seen it all come together in a narrative form and kind of be building this background story the whole time. That's, and that from your perspective, that seemed like a money grab, and that seemed, now you can kind of look at the bigger picture, but that's how it's been in the comics forever.
Right.
I mean, it's always, we're doing Captain America books, we're doing Iron Man books, we're doing Thor books, and then eventually, boom, we got a big crossover, and it's going to be going on for the next 3 months, and every book's going to tie into it, and everybody's going to be a part of it. So there's and in the comic world, that kind of is frustrating sometimes because you have to end up buying a whole bunch of stuff that you might not ever buy before, right? Because it's tying into this story. I got to read it. But so I think the movies have done a good job, and Kevin Feige personally has done a great job of taking what has been such a standard fare in the comics and applying it very expertly to the movies. So even if you think, it's just a money grab, there's no denying that what they have done has built the world piece by piece by piece. And we still have so much time we can play with. That's one of the great things, one of the most genius things I think about it. You go back to World War II, you have what happened to Steve, you have S.H.I.E.L.D. start to be built. You have all of this time between then and Steve waking up where S.H.I.E.L.D. was a thing.
Right.
And superheroes may have been around. I mean, we're setting Captain Marvel in the 1990s. That's showing us that there were superheroes that were protecting the world before even Iron Man.
Sure.
Right? So I think that they've done a genius thing where they've left themselves these huge gaps of time that they can always go back to and fill in and just kind of add the details into the world as they need them.
Exactly.
And as they fit with everything else that's going on.
Well, and I guess I would just, maybe to close, is to say on a personal note, what I guess I've been most excited about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is it's allowed me to get into your world as my son of this comic world that you've been in all your life that I just was never in. We shared Star Wars, we shared Star Trek, but we never really shared this comic world.
Right, I wasn't talking to you about X-Men.
Right.
Yeah.
This kind of gave me an entry into that so that we can at least have a conversation about it. And every time I see a movie, what do I do as soon as I get out?
Well, you call me.
I call you and say, well, what was this? And what's this?
I got a text from your wife the moment you guys were driving home from Black Panther that said, we just saw Black Panther, we have questions. Give me a call.
So that's the beauty of, on a personal level, what Marvel has done for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, that's going to bring us to a close for this episode. I want to thank my pops for sitting in and chit-chatting with us.
Loved every minute.
Right on. So if you guys are digging what we're putting down, do me a favor, go on over to entertainthegeeky.com. Check out the blog posts. Check out the Nerd News show. All the back episodes of Entertain the Geeky. We got all kinds of stuff. The merchandise. We're really trying to make a legitimate go of this. So check out the website. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If your Facebook is more your speed, if that's where you find your thing, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/entertainmentgeeky. On Twitter at entertaingeeky. And if you want to chat, you can shoot me an email at etgnerdnews@gmail.com. So again, thanks again to Pops for coming
Glad
on.
to be here. I guess we'll see you all at Infinity War in April.
Yeah, April 27th. I can't wait.
I can't
It's
wait.
going to be the best. All right, guys. Until next time, stay geeky.